Hello, everybody. Good morning. I hope this is going out. My screen is not indicating that it is, so if someone could say hello, that would be wonderful. Well, it looks like on my phone it's flashing up looking like it is going live, so I will get started. So welcome to this week's Learn with Lorna. This is number 91, where we're looking at the theme of friendship. My name is Lorna. I am the Community Engagement Officer for the Highland Archive Service. I work, as I say, with the Highland Archive Service. We have 4 archive centres across the Highlands. We have the Highland Archive and Registration Centre in Inverness. We have Nucleus, the Nuclear and Caithness Archives in Wick. We have Lochaber Archive Centre in Port William and Skye and Lochalsh Archive Centre in Portree. And together, the 4 of those make up the Highland Archive Service. Now, this series, as you'll know if you've watched me before, this series is brought to you at High Life Highland, by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and there's no payment or subscription required to take part in this series of events. But if you're able to donate towards our work, then we're very, very grateful for that. And as I say each week, I know I say it again and again, but it really is very much appreciated. This week, we are continuing focusing on things that we maybe think a little bit more about at this time of year. So this week, we're looking at stories of friendship. At this time of year, we often turn our thoughts to friends and family, sending cards, sending presents, meeting up, reflecting over friendships, looking back over the history of our friendships and looking forward to plans for next year. And I think probably this year more than any other, we are thinking about our friends, thinking about our families. Many of us won't be able to see friends and family, and some people right now across the UK, and I'm sure across other countries, are cancelling plans that they had to meet up with friends and with family. I know that I've been in that situation this Christmas and last Christmas, where we've had plans have had to be pulled. We're missing people. And one of the things I've said dozens and dozens of times since I started doing this 90 episodes ago, and one of the things I've said many times since I started working with the Highland Archive Service in 2014, is that people don't change much. We have a tendency, sometimes not always helped maybe by our history curriculum, I think, to think of people in the past as a list of dates. But they had laughter and they had tears and they had highs and lows and they had people down the road that they didn't like and they had friends. And I think it's important to remember all of that. And so we're going to look at that and see what we can find about friendships in our collections. A couple of things to note here. So we tend to think of the word friend in its most common usage, from the Old English word meaning one attached to another by feelings of personal regard and preference. So that's the word, that's the way we usually think of the word friend. And I love that. I love the word preference there. One attached to another by a feeling of preference. So these are people that you have picked to have around you. So that's what makes it, of course, different from family, that old saying, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. These are people you've picked by preference. And that's what we tend to think of, I think, with the word friend. These are people close to us because we've chosen to have them close to us. But there are variants of the meaning friend. And the Dictionary of the Scots Language, which I have talked about before, and I know there are other fans of the Dictionary of the Scots Language, gives us several other options for the word friend. So a creditor is, as people would say, that they had a friend would be someone they owed money to. But most notably, In the past, the friend would also be used as a word to mean a relative, a blood relation, or a kinsman. And that common usage in the past is where we're going to start. Now, I did a talk some months ago about Lord Lovat. I'm sure some of you will have watched that. And he's a classic example of this. He uses the word friend literally, liberally, sorry, to talk about people who are affiliated to him in one way or another, notably kinsmen. And it's very, very common throughout his letters. But here's a great example from the 28th of October, 1736. And he's writing to Lochiel about a terrible and manifest insult which has been done to him by Lochiel's near relations and kinsmen. And he's writing about his need for satisfaction for the robbing and plundering of his country. And he writes to Lochiel, the proposition that John Fraser was so silly as to make to me to send money to those ruffians to ransom the cattle and bring them back, in my humble opinion, is as great an insult as the first. However, I have borne patiently all those affronts till now, in the hopes that the Laird of Lochiel, my near relation and my good friend, would give me redress, and that the clan of the Camerons would not willingly and wilfully make war against the clan of the Frasers, their old friends and allies, who fought their battles against the Macdonalds and the Macintoshes. I am very much sure that your father and grandfather would be very averse to such a war with a kindred that they loved as much as any in the Highlands. So it's an almost threatening reference to friendship. There's that an expectation that if you're going to call myself your friend, my near relation and good friend, then that comes with the duty that you have to have my back when I need you to. So it's a slightly ominous wording, I think, there, that I have patiently borne all those affronts in the hope that my good friend would give me redress, because I can't imagine that you wouldn't when we mean this much to each other. There's a slight obligation there. And another example of that can be seen in another document that's held in our Lochaber Archive Centre. This is a letter from James Drummond, the Duke of Perth. Now, I say Duke of Perth, that was a Jacobite title. It wasn't a recognised title in Britain. He was simply called James Drummond. And he's writing to Donald Cameron, again, Cameron of Lochiel, in 1736. And he's talking about the recruitment of Camerons for the French army. And he says, Sir, there was a man of your name that was recommended when he was last in Edinburgh to be advanced into the French service, and he promised to bring over with him some recruits, but would not do the thing unless he had your approbation and countenance, which I undertook to ask of you, hoping that considering the friendship that has always been between our families, and the regard I had always for you, and shall always continue to have, for your personal good qualities, you would not refuse to countenance the thing that can be of great use to my brother. So again, there's that you wouldn't refuse a thing that's going to be helpful to me because you call yourself my friend. And if you call yourself my friend, then I expect to have what I need from you at a moment of crisis. There's a lot of references to the word friendship within Jacobite material, actually. There's loads of references to the king's friends or the king's lovers, friends of the king, friends of the cause. So that indication that if you're a friend of something, you're espousing and supporting that subject. You wonder a little bit what the type of friendship would have been that in this court document. So we have a warrant from 1787 to arrest one Alexander MacLennan in Glenstrathfarrer. And MacLennan has been arrested. His arrest warrant is put out. He's wanted for, in a private and clandestine manner, shooting his friend Hugh Fraser, son of Hugh Fraser, taxman in Glenstrathfarrer. So that's interesting. So his arrest warrant has been issued because he's shot his friend. Now, apparently the two men were out hunting. They were hunting deer together when MacLennan took it upon himself to shoot his friend in a place called Riachan on Seaforth's estate. That's what it says in the document. And Hugh Fraser was killed instantly. MacLennan was advised by his friends to flee the country in order to avoid punishment. But he seems to have ignored them and turned out to watch Murdoch Fraser, who was a missionary preaching at Arkells. and the warrant to seize and apprehend him has been issued to take him wherever he is in the country. But I thought it was really interesting because in the description of that, it describes the shooting of a friend by a friend. So there are all sorts of ways that that word can be used. Now, if I'm not, just pause for a second, say if I'm not responding to any comments that are coming in, my screen is completely frozen. So I am reliably assured by one of my colleagues that this is going out fine. So, but I'm so frustrated on Christmas, the Christmas one, not to be able to see your comments and not be able to speak to you. But I will pick up on them afterwards. But if I'm being a bit juddery and a bit stumbly, that's why, because the screen has thrown me. It's completely frozen. So I'm just talking to a blank wall. Okay, so we've already seen the word friend used to mean a kinsman. We've seen it mean used to mean the companion, just someone you were out with that day. We've seen it used to mean relation, and of course we still say that as a coverall word today. Yes, there's someone out there with a friend. Well, we don't know if they're friends. We're just using it to. You don't know the status of the relationship, but we're using it to signify two people being together. So there's loads of different ways we use the word friend. And the word friend can be used to apply to another set of letters held in our Lochaber Archive Centre. And these are the letters between Lady Vere Cameron, who was Lady Vere Hobart, and Anne Lister. Anne Lister of Shipton Hall, famous for many things, famous for having female lovers, famous for marrying her long-term partner, Anne Walker, in 1834, and famous for her wonderful and prolific detailed diaries. And for many years, the word friend would cover a whole range of female friendships. There was an understanding that women particularly would always have very, very, very close friends, and that wouldn't be questioned any more than that. And one of Anne Lister's very close friends, and quite possibly a lover that seems to be implied in her diaries, was a lady called Vere Hobart, whose marriage to Donald Cameron of Lochiel ended the possibility of that relationship developing any further. And here's a letter written by Anne Lister to Vere Hobart when she has learned about her upcoming marriage. It's addressed from Shibden Hall, Wednesday, the 11th of July, 1832. I suppose, my dearest Vere, from Lady Stuart's letter, that you are writing to tell me the day. It is to be the end of the month, 2 or 3 weeks sooner than I have expected. Never too soon to do well, never too soon for you to be happy. May this greatest event of your life be the most fortunate. So we know from her diaries that she had discovered that this woman that she had been very close to was going to get married, and that's her writing to say, I know now that the date of your upcoming marriage. And there's another one here just prior to Vere's marriage. So she's going from being Vere Hobart to being Vere Cameron, and you can really hear the closeness of their relationship in this one. This is written on the 28th of July, 1832. My dearest Vere, I had your letter on Tuesday night, and you have been the constant occupier of my thoughts ever since. I must write once more before the 31st. I must take leave of you as Vere Hobart. And it's written, the surname's underlined, so I must speak to you one last time while you're still Vere Hobart and not Vere Cameron. I won't dwell too much on good wishes. These have gone before, and if they had not, you would have felt assured of them nevertheless. I hope the day will never come when you either doubt or forget my good wishes for you. One letter written between them ends, my dearest Vere, you and yours. I shall think of you often and always affectionately. The day will never come when I shall be less truly than at present your very real and attached friend, A.L. So there's a real indication there of, just regardless of what the relationship was, a very, very close relationship, very personal letters written about a close and personal attachment. And again, the word friend appears very, very frequently at the end of letters, your obedient servant and close friend. But there's something in those that really signifies a close bond between them, which is feels very contemporary in terms of an outpouring of a genuine feeling. If you're interested in Anne Lister's story, it's absolutely fascinating. Um, I would absolutely recommend you have a look at West Yorkshire Archives, who hold the 27 volumes of Anne's diaries, over 5 million words, detailing everything from her close physical encounters with other women, businesses, food, social activities, clothing, everything really detailed. This maybe you will not be able to see it, but this is an extract from Anne's diary that I got from West Yorkshire Archives. So do have a wee look at them if you're interested. And of course, letters like that are a great place for us to find friends writing to each other and also talking about other mutual friends, um, and talking about what makes their friendship special. So this letter dates from 1774 and is from our Baillie of Domain collection, which I've spoken about before, written by Mr. Francis Baillie to Lady Dineen. And it's written from Portsmouth, 26th of March, 1774. Dear Madam, Sunday last I wrote you a few lines in a hurry from Deal, which is in Kent, which I gave you the trouble to pay for. That's what we were talking about last week, the receiver paying for the letter. But this goes undercover to my good friend Mr. Godsman, from whom I had the pleasure of receiving a letter last night, wherein he acquainted me that he has not seen you look better than you did when his letter was wrote. This, you need not doubt, makes me very happy, and I hope that you will keep your spirits up and will continue to do so until you have the happiness of meeting the gentleman that I am going to. This is my sincere wish, and I hope it will be the case. So he's recording his delight that I'm so glad to hear you're well and that you're looking healthy and keep your spirits up. And he goes on to say, stay well until you come to meet these gentlemen. And it transpires in the letter that it's her sons that he's going to meet. Wednesday we arrived at Spithead, which is just off here. And this day I came ashore in order to bid my friends adieu, as I believe this will be the last time they will hear from me while in Britain, as we only await the judges who are expected to come here in a few days. If I have time when we are going into sail, I will write a few lines. But if not, you need be in no way uneasy, that I enjoy perfect health, and the sea and coming round here agreed with me perfectly well. And it gives me such a stomach that I could eat 6 times a day, although the victuals are not such as I was used to at Dunedin. And the cookery, to see it would be enough to turn a Dutchman's stomach. I don't know why a Dutchman would have a more sensitive, a more robust stomach. However, all these things must be overlooked when aboard ship, and I assure you it goes down very sweetly. And as I hope the time I shall have will not be very long, it does not much matter anyway. There are 4 judges to go with us, 3 of which are to bring their wives, and one of their ladies will probably be brought to bed at sea. So she's obviously expecting a child. So when I think that ladies big with child can go to sea on so long a voyage, my mother needs give herself no uneasiness about me. I must conclude and believe that I remain a most grateful sense of your friendship and the care that you have shown both to my mother and to me. And I doubt not as her dependence lies upon friends, and you will continue the same to her. Therefore may God bless and preserve you until you once more have the pleasure of meeting with your sons, which is the earnest wish, dear madam, of your most affectionate servant and friend, Francis Baillie. So there's a real indication there into their friendship, a gratitude for the kindness that has been shown, an expectation that that kindness will continue to be shown to his mother as he goes away. So again, another aspect of friendship, someone at a moment of parting, looking back and saying, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for everything you have been to me. Please stay well, stay healthy until I see you again, which again is just um, a very normal thing that we would all write in a Christmas card, in a letter. Now, sometimes we use our friendships, of course, to share fears, to get consolation, to let off steam about everything from family to work to partners. And that's the case with many of the letters that we hold between Jean Bigger, who was Jean McLean previously, and her friend Betsy. Now, I read a wee snippet of one of these letters way back in episode 5 of this, so a full 86 episodes ago. But I wanted to share the whole letter with you because it is perhaps typical of a letter between friends. There are fears in it, there are an appeal for consolation and support. There's a little bit of snippiness about other family members. Um, I'll share it with you. So this was written when she was just outside Aldershot, August the 29th, 1939. So of course, a key date just prior, just at the start of the Second World War. My dearest Jean, everything is as black as possible. We expect that war will be declared today and there will be air raids tonight. We have all our lights in the house painted blue, and I am busy seeing to thick curtains, etc. Otherwise, we have no special preparations beyond our famous trench. Lestock's 2 old aunts from London arrived tonight. They're frightened to stay where they are. I expect if they have air raids, they will have hysterics all over me. They are self-indulgent old women, and I should think them without any self-control, and I really shan't be able to feel that they matter at all, except, of course, that Lestock is fond of them. I've left the children at Sand Lodge and came back myself on Saturday. I was nearly distracted. At first, Daddy made himself very disagreeable in his normal way. I rang up Margaret Leslie at the Sombra Hotel and asked her to have the children, and to my astonishment, she said it would be too much responsibility. I'm in a black rage with her. What a way for a woman to behave who is established with her husband and children in the safest place you could find. However, Daddy suddenly changed round and said what was the use of a father if you couldn't rely on him, and the result is that I have left him and Aunt Nellie with the children, the 2 old people busily occupied in making excuses to each other for the fact that they both want to keep out of the danger zone, although I'm sure no excuses are necessary. I think they will both stay in Shetland indefinitely now. I hope the children won't be too much for Aunt Nellie, but I think she's very glad to have them, and she is doing as much as any of the people who are taking in evacuated children. Lestock expects to be sent abroad at once if war is declared, within 10 days anyway. He's been recommended for double promotion by Colonel Morgan. That's a jump from Major to Brigadier, missing out Colonel, but he doesn't expect to get it. We are, of course, wretched and miserable and living in a nightmare, as everyone is, but calm. In September, I couldn't sleep or eat. Now I do both in a normal manner. Hitler's war of nerves has failed completely as far as we are concerned, and indeed, I think this applies to everyone. I do not feel at all frightened at the prospect of air raids, though with militia camps all around, this is rather a bad area. The only thing that terrifies me is the possibility of having to face the rest of my life without Lestock if he goes. If he goes abroad, I shall drive the car up to the west coast, having shut up the house, and look for a house in a safe area to which I can bring the children, probably in Scotland. What do you think of this Russian-German pact? It seems to me that everything is so complicated it's beyond comprehension. The boat I came safe in was packed to capacity and making her last voyage before being taken over by the Admiralty. Isn't it a terrible feeling that we are all being forced into a war which nobody wants, and which everyone knows can lead to no good result? We are being rushed headlong into destruction, with our eyes open to the consequences, and we are powerless to save ourselves. With love from Betty. As I say, I know I've shared extracts of that before, but I find it a very powerful letter because there's that little snippiness about, his aunts don't matter, they're going to cause hysterics. There's a bit about why is that woman not taking in my children and helping? All of that's very, very sort of things we would say to each other over a cup of tea. But it opens with that very striking line, everything is as black as possible, and finishes with that incredible paragraph about being headlong rushed into destruction and that fear that her husband will be taken from her and she'll have to live the rest of her life without him. And I just think it's altogether sums up a friendship and the sort of things you say to each other as you have a friendship. And of course, having someone to speak to, particularly in times of crisis, is incredibly important. And we've seen that recently, how much having a person to speak to and a listening ear can help people get through the worst times. And of course, some of the strongest bonds have been formed in adversity. Some of the strongest friendships have come out of particularly wars. People who have been through something traumatic and horrendous together. Another place that we have information about friendships is in diaries. And of course, diaries are places, as you will all know, I'm sure if any of you keep them. I know my mum is a prolific diary keeper, so I dread reading those one day. But diaries are often places for reflection, where people can be honest, where they can note down their thoughts, their feelings about people they meet, and the people who are closest to them. And so I wanted to share with you some extracts from the really wonderful and amazing diary of the governess Anne Fraser, who's governess to the children of the Earl of Buchan. And again, I've shared extracts from this diary before, but not these ones. In this entry, she talks about making friends, going to a ball, meeting some people, making friends with them. So just the way any of us might attend something and come out of it with acquaintances. One evening this summer, just as the school was over, we saw an uncommonly beautiful brig sailing in between the suitors. She's in Cromarty at this point. I was taking a walk with Jane Moss. We were told that this ship was the Nimrod. 2 nights after, 2 of the officers came to the evening dancing school. I was introduced to Dr. Hector and danced a country dance with him. I did not much advise my partner, but he chatted a great deal to me. McLean thought it would be a good thing for him to give his ball then, as he thought some of the officers would most likely take tickets, so the ball was to be on Friday. So she talks there about going to that dancing school, meeting these people, the sailors that have come off the ship. And then in a later entry, she goes on to talk about them again. She says, "These gentlemen became our friends. They were long stationed on the coast, and we had the pleasure of seeing them often, and had many a happy dance with the young men, amongst whom we each had one particular favourite. Mr. Hannah, a very tall and handsome man, but the most thoughtless and extravagant creature in the world, was my great favourite. Dr. Hector was engaged to be married to a Miss McLean, an American lady, and left the Nimrod to go and be married. On his arrival at Quebec, he found his fair one had given her hand to another, and he instantly quitted America to return to Scotland, and was unfortunately drowned as his ship was wrecked. He was a great loss to us all, as he was a sincere and kind friend. The faithless fair one went mad when she heard of his dreadful end. Mr. Gorsten now lives in Shetland. He is retired from the perils of a sailor's life, and lives happily with his cousin Miss Nicholson for a wife." So just a personal, a diary, a private entry about meeting people, and then about how that friendship developed and the consequences of it. In this extract from 1826, she tells the life story of a woman that she's met and a woman that she admires greatly. This is a Mrs. Nicholson who came into her life as a nurse looking after one of the children, a child called Maria, who subsequently died. But this is Anne's kind of moving and personal description of Mrs. Nicholson and what she thinks of her, and the way Mrs. Nicholson's own life experiences have formed her character and how they became friends. So she says, "Mrs. Nicholson, the sick nurse, was still in the house. She was the daughter of a Major Nicholson, an Irish gentleman who had run off with a beautiful young lady, a Miss Nugent, of a very old Roman Catholic family. Her father was so enraged at her marriage to a Protestant that he vowed he would never forgive her, and when she sent for her clothes, he had them all burnt and sent to her with his curse. This curse surely descended to her children, of whom Mrs. Nicholson was the eldest. She, at a very early age, married a Captain Moncur of a regiment who was at that time engaged in Ireland, being the time of the rebellion. He was a very clever man, but much given to drink, and when drunk, was so violent and mad that he always used to want to murder her. When he was sober, they were happy, but as that was seldom the case, they were obliged to separate. His conduct had been such that she divorced him. They had one child, Thomas, who was brought up in Heriot's Hospital. Moncur's father, being a currier in Edinburgh, gave him a right to this. One great cause of contention between Moncur and his wife was that she felt, when too late, that she had made a very low connection in marrying him, and she was uncommonly clever and would often say the most cutting things in the coolest manner. For some years after their separation, she took in needlework and sometimes sewed in some of the respectable shops, the profit of which, in addition to the £20 per annum allowed her by her brother, supported her very comfortably. She had at that time 2 good, kind friends in Mrs. Dr. Brunton, authoress of Discipline, etc., and Mrs. Dr. Adams, but they both died. Poor Mrs. Nicholson fell into very bad health and almost lost her eyesight, so she was obliged to try at sick nursing. After this she sank sadly. Want of money, want of society, to which in her earlier life she had been accustomed, made, as I have heard, a sad change. But the high spirit and kind heart of her country were in her then as they had been in different days. But why should I write in my diary about her? Why should I dwell upon her and her sorrows? Perhaps it's because she seemed to have for me a greater liking than to anyone else. Perhaps because I've so often listened to the many deeply interesting anecdotes which she used to tell me, connected with the Irish Rebellion. Perhaps it was her own many misfortunes and sufferings. Perhaps her very faults, which sprung from the hot head and the kind heart so peculiar to her country, together with an uncommonly brilliant wit and a frankness of manner, which has just made me feel so much interested in her. And I love that. I love that really personal description of here's what I've learned about a person. This is what made me reflect on them. And this is why, going back to that very first definition I mentioned right at the beginning, this is why my preference is to be with this person. And poor Mrs. Nicholson, having had this unfortunate start with the break with the family and then the husband who drank and then the death of her two close friends, poor Mrs. Nicholson went on to die herself, and that's recorded in Anne Fraser's diary as well, with great sadness. So I've looked at a range of different friendship types here: relatives, acquaintances, close friends, friendships within relationships, friendships in adversity. But I wanted to close by sharing a poem with you called To an Absent Friend. This is also in Anne Fraser's diary in the 1820s. And I thought it was particularly pertinent at this time of year, and particularly this year. And it is so beautifully written. If you like the words of it, I have put it out to go out on Christmas Eve on our Facebook page as well, so you'll be able to see the original. And this is her poem. To an Absent Friend. Thou art not gone, thou couldst not go. True friends can never part. Our prayer is one, our hope is one, and we are one in heart. Nor place nor time can ever divide the souls which friendship seals, but still the changing scenes of life their mutual love reveals. Body from body may be placed remote as pole from pole, but can our fleshly frailties bind the fellowship of soul? 'Tis when removed from grosser sense my spirit claims her right. My friend is often least away when absent from my sight. Which I just thought was beautiful and appropriate. Thank you so much for being with me so far this year. It has been another extraordinary year, but it has been wonderful to share it with you. And as I say, I'm so saddened that I can't see your comments coming up, particularly today when I was looking forward to wishing you all a really Merry Christmas and every hope for the new year being better. So thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your emails and messages, and for being with me this year. I hope you're going to join me next week. Next week on the 30th, we'll be looking at a subject, again, particularly prevalent at this time of year, obsessed with the weather. So I hope that you can join me then. In the meantime, I hope you have a very peaceful and happy Christmas. And a reminder that this series is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. That High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and there's no payment or subscription required to take part in it. But if you're able to donate towards our work, then we're very grateful for that. And again, a very Merry Christmas.